I think we are just getting everyone in here, but welcome. Really excited to be here with Mary and Megan today to talk about product marketing in crowded, disruptive markets, this trend we've seen a ton on lately. My name is Brendan McCook. I'm the VP of cohorts for Reforge. What that effectively means is I get to work really closely with experts like Mary and Megan to bring their expertise to you all in the form of our programs. Our upcoming spring cohort is right around the corner, and this product marketing program that Mary and Megan have been working on is going to be featured in that cohort. So today we're going to go through just a little bit of a preview of some of the perspectives from that program and kind of Reforge's perspective a little bit on this problem of how to use product marketing in crowded, disruptive markets. And then we'll jump into a discussion with Mary and Megan and get some of their experience and perspectives firsthand. And of course, we'll close it out with some Q&A at the end. But before I jump into the Reforge side of this, I'd love to start by introing our guests here. So maybe I'll start with Megan. I'd love if you could just summarize your professional background and maybe so the audience can get to know you a little bit. I'd love to hear what's been your kind of latest obsession, the thing on your mind most recently.
Sure. So thanks so much for having us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm Megan. I am currently VP of Marketing for Jasper, which is an AI company in a very crowded and disruptive space right now. And so this is very much on my mind. Joined Jasper in September, and it's just been nonstop since then. Prior to Jasper, I spent kind of the bulk of my career at HubSpot, growing that from a single product, private company to a multi-product global publicly traded enterprise. Was there for about 10 years and got to see it go through all those changes. I started in marketing. I started in marketing as a copywriter, but then expanded into product marketing and really sort of spent a lot of my career in that role, and now sort of run the full marketing org. Oh, and
That's great.
what I'm fascinated with right now. So I'll tell you the latest book that I read because I think it's really good. It's a book called 12 Bits by Jeanette Winterson. And it's on AI, surprise, surprise, but it's written in a really beautiful kind of essay style. Very much not a tech book or a business book. It's really about society and how we communicate and how ideas are formed. And so I highly recommend it.
I love that. Well, I'll move over to Mary, and I love your intro and your latest obsession as well. I'll say the latest book I've read is actually Mary's book, which is The Pocket Guide to Product
Yeah, that one
Launches,
too.
which just came out right around the same time of the program. So no shortage of insights from the product marketing standpoint from Mary. But Mary, I'd love to hear your background and what your latest obsession is.
Thanks so much, Brendan. Well, yes, as you said, I'm Mary Sheehan. Great to meet you all. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm currently the head of product marketing for Adobe Lightroom, which is a photo editing product, also in a very competitive space. It's a wonderful product if you want to check it out. I've also had product marketing leadership positions at companies like Google, AdRoll, and several other startups, as well as my own PMM consultancy. And I'm the host of the Women in Product Marketing podcast. Hopefully there's some listeners on this webinar today too. And Brendan, as you mentioned, I just wrote a book. I have it here, The Pocket Guide to Product Launches. It's a really fun experience. And I'm glad that it's done and out there in the world. So please take a look if you can. Yeah, I think that now that the book is done and now that this course is about to launch, I feel like I have all this free time on my hands. But I'd say outside of work, my biggest obsession has actually been teaching my 3.5-year-old to ski. So skiing is a really big part of our family, and we're now teaching him up in Lake Tahoe, and it's been just a really wonderful and fun family experience. So a little bit about me outside of work.
Little kid skiing is the most adorable thing to see. It's really, really awesome. All right, I'm going to jump into a little bit of Reforge's perspective, and I'm going to highlight just a quick preview of just a tiny bit, just a taste of the program that we are launching this spring. So I'll share my screen here and jump into this. So really in the very beginning of our program, we talk a lot about positioning in product marketing, and really positioning for us is kind of like if you look at the market as a geographical map, product positioning is a process of figuring out where your product is positioned on that map. Where do you want to put that? And we talk in the program about how there's a lot of just like fill in the blank template approaches to positioning. What you see a lot of are things like this that are just like for a given target audience that needs some help with a pain point. Our product is in this market and it provides this differentiated benefit. It's pretty fill in the blank, and a lot of teams just default to this. They're like, we need a positioning statement. Let's just go ahead and make this. And in fact, I checked myself. We actually wrote this as part of the program as an example of just like a fill in the blank template. I asked, as we do these days, ChatGPT to write a product positioning statement. And it was pretty much that fill in the blank template. It was just like, you need these few things. You need to be able to state them. That's great. But what we've kind of really honed in on is what separates really great teams that are able to really win effectively with product marketing. And one of the things we identified was great product marketing teams and companies that really excel in positioning. One factor that separates them is their ability to define what we call the strategic emphasis. The strategic emphasis is what connects the what you're building. What's the benefits? What's the thing that you built and what can it do to why you're building it? Where's the insight you have about what people need, about where there's opportunity in the market that helps bring this to life? And just to illustrate this quickly, you can look at a company like bookshop.org. Bookshop.org allows you to buy from local independent bookstores, books from local independent bookstores. That's the what. But the why was just a deep understanding that there's this large community of people that want to support independent bookstores and can't today. And so this allows them, once they can identify the strategic emphasis, to build a product marketing strategy around highlighting this benefit that they can create for independent bookstores. So in the program, we go through a pretty in-depth process of how do you research this? How do you synthesize the data? And how do you land on a strategic emphasis for your product? And we talk about 4 different categories of strategic emphases. Pain point based, where you're trying to say, we are the best solution for a problem that exists out there. Audience based, where you say, for a given audience, we are the best product for you. Differentiator based, where you're starting to say, we are counter positioning against other products out there and saying we can offer something different that no one else can. And then change based, this idea that we're actually a thought leader in this market, taking a brand new approach that we're gonna help transform the industry on. And just to bring this to life a little bit, I think a good example is way back when Spotify first launched, they really leaned into this pain point based strategic emphasis. Out there was iTunes, you had to pay per song, you had Pandora, it had all these ads, and Spotify really leaned into this idea, we can offer you this unlimited music. It resonated with me. I've been paying them ever since they launched. But then over time, what you see happen is the market changes around it. And strategic emphases can't be these static things. They change based on the market around you. So looking at Apple Music and Tidal today, you can look at these different types of strategic emphases, different companies solving the same problems. Apple Music with this audience-based approach, we're going to be the most convenient product out there for all your Apple connected apps. Tidal saying we're going to be a socially conscious approach. Artists aren't paid enough for what they do. We're going to change that. And because of that, now you have a ton of companies offering the same kind of solution. Spotify's actually had to shift their strategic emphasis from that pain point approach to today, I'd argue they're much more of a differentiator-based approach, saying we offer Discover Weekly, your annual wrap up, all of these different features that help bring music to life. So this is something we talk about in the program of how you need to define the strategic emphasis and continue to evolve it. But what we see lately, and I think where I'm going to break from we talk about in the program and talk more about specifically the topic today, is what I call these crowded disruptive markets. And these are things that go from almost bare to really crowded in a really short period of time. And you can look at things recently, crypto and Web3, electric vehicles have taken off on this, video conferencing, I'd say remote work things in general around COVID. And then most recently, and probably the most sudden shift, something that went so crowded so quickly, generative AI. And so in this program, we talk about the importance of defining a strategic emphasis, how it has to be thoughtfully defined, informed by quality research, targeted data. But in these crowded, disruptive markets, you don't always have the luxury of investing thoughtfully in defining the strategic emphasis, yet you still need to react to the market around you in your product positioning and your strategic emphasis. So a few challenges come into play here that we'll talk a little bit more about in the discussion. But one, launch timelines are compressed. There's immense pressure to stay ahead of competition, get things out of the door. What's possible is changing rapidly. So focusing on a single point of differentiation is difficult. And also customers can't always explain to you. They can't always voice what they want because what's possible is changing so quickly. Organizations find rapid change uncomfortable. A lot of companies and leaders can be grounded in old heuristics and reluctant to new perspectives. And of course, there's a lot of noise in the market. Tons of things are happening. Headlines are coming in all the time. What's like a real durable competitive change or market change versus something that's a flash in the pan is often hard to tell. So if you're a product marketer and you're tasked with aligning your positioning and strategy around a winning strategic emphasis, and meanwhile, all the variables that go into positioning are changing almost daily, like what do? Does that just mean that you can't do it? You go back to your fill in the blank approach? Well, I'd argue that that's not the best way to do it. And there's no one single answer, but I think one thing that's important is everyone in the market is struggling with this with you. And I think there are things you can do to be ahead of the market and take a more deliberate approach than other companies out there. And I'm going to highlight 3 things, and then Mary and Megan will be able to jump in and highlight a few more. But I think 3 things that have come up in some of our conversations, maybe a little bit of the behind the scenes as we were building this program. One, during these times, you can give your product marketing what I'd call wartime responsibility. Increase the scope of product marketing responsibility to drive faster decisions and stronger alignment. The second, you can look for competitive signals and not be distracted by noise. You want to be really thoughtful about where there's real risk versus getting sucked into hype and shifting your strategy and thrashing around. And lastly, I'll say inform your positioning with this 80-20 research. Prioritize the most important research and accept some level of uncertainty that goes into this. And let me just start with the first one here real quick. I don't really love the term wartime responsibility, but this actually comes from a book that Ben Horowitz wrote, or it's at least based on it, called The Hard Things About Hard Things. And he talks about wartime CEOs versus peacetime CEOs. And he lists out a ton of different things about these 2 groups. And these are just 3 of them. It says peacetime CEO knows that proper protocol leads to winning. Wartime CEO violates protocol in order to win. Peacetime CEO strives for broad-based buy-in. Wartime CEO neither indulges consensus building nor tolerates disagreement. Peacetime CEO always has a contingency plan. Wartime CEO knows that sometimes you've got to roll a hard 6. The idea here is that product marketers don't just take on the CEO role, but they can adopt some of this mentality. And I think in these moments, if they are able to take on a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more of that decision-making, they can help drive things forward because product marketing sits at the intersection of all these key stakeholders that need to be aligned quickly. So what this looks like, you can kind of become your company's mission control. You can find where there's misalignment, try to figure out what input different stakeholders need and guide it. You can take on more decision ownership. You can find what can you be a final decision on that you previously weren't to help speed things up. And then of course, meet stakeholders where they're at. You want to be able to bring people in the room together, form a SWAT team, meet more frequently with some key leaders at your company. That could be a really expensive meeting, but in these kind of drastically changing times, that's a price you're willing to pay to keep everyone aligned and move more quickly. All right, the second one I'll go through quick here. Don't get distracted by noise. Look for that competitive signal. This is really difficult. If I look back at COVID, I remember when Clubhouse was on the rise and social media went into a big frenzy. It was like, is Clubhouse going to just replace everything we know about social media today? And of course it didn't. And it's easy in hindsight to say, oh, maybe we have known. But I think product marketers, their job is to be the sense check of what's a real threat and what isn't. A couple things you can do to help not get distracted by the noise. Pressure test the signal that you're getting from the market. Are new competitors solving the same problem you are or something adjacent? If you're Twitter and you see Clubhouse coming in, they're not actually solving the same problem. The tendency is to think if they can solve an adjacent problem, they're immediately going to take over what I do. That's not always the case. Are customers actually leaving and why? You talk to people that are actually bringing up these competitors or market changes. And then this is time to take stock. What capabilities do you have that new competitors don't? Those are things you're going to want to reorient your position around. And if these are real threats, that's where you want to start aligning to be, counter positioning against people that are disrupting you. A great example of this that I think, Megan, you brought up was Shutterfly, really leaned into AI because their biggest competitor, Getty, chose not to. And it was a deliberate counterposition of you can see what others are doing, see the market changing around you, and take a stand in that market of how you're going to win. And if it's not a competitive threat or there's some uncertainty, wait a little bit. Look for cracks in their capabilities and disruptors' capabilities. Look for what they don't do well. All companies struggle with stuff. It's easy to think that this new thing is going to take over and they have everything right. But some of the best advice you can have is just wait and watch and don't jump to thrash your strategy around just on some early signal. All right, the last one here, informed positioning with 80-20 research. This actually, Mary, in your book, you talk about You talk about rapid competitive insights. And I think this really accelerates the need for that in these different environments, because you don't have time to fully inform your strategy. Ideally, you can launch full qualitative research, gather lots of data in informing your positioning and strategy. But this is what a lot of companies don't do well. They don't take enough time to do this, but in rapid disruption, you don't have time. So what does this look like in practice? One, you can focus on 1 to 3 main competitors, not 10. Lots of people want to do full sector stands, understand the whole competitive landscape, but now's the time to really focus your efforts on the people who matter most around you. Put more weight on recent feedback. If you're seeing things change, sometimes you might be reluctant to jump at that. But if you get recent feedback, that's a time to put more weight on that. Conduct deep exit interviews with customers. Customers are great. They put a lot of thought into understanding how different changes affect their business. So if you're ever having customers leave from a B2B or even a B2C standpoint, understanding why and conducting deep interviews, that can be really high quality signal for you. And then of course, leverage intuition to make up for imperfect data. You can't let perfect be the enemy of good. You have to sometimes be willing to take a stand and be opinionated and let everything you know inform your decisions. Companies can get stuck if they are waiting for data to give them a perfect answer in a time that's moving fast. So this doesn't mean that research isn't important. It doesn't mean that you don't need to do research. It's actually harder. You have to be much more deliberate about what research you're going to use to inform your positioning. And that's going to have huge ramifications. The research you choose to inform this can have huge ramifications on the strategies you choose. So you have to be very deliberate about that. So that's a little bit of Reforge's perspective. I'm going to stop my part here, and we're going to start bringing in Mary and Meghan. I'll kick this off a little bit. I'd love to get some of your perspectives. First, I want to go back to a little bit the challenge of these types of markets, these ones that go from crowded to disruptive, bear to crowded really, really quickly. And Mary, I'll start with you. When we were first discussing this topic, you mentioned Tesla as an example of a company experiencing this disruption, something that kind of the floor got moved from under them. How has that challenge played out for them from a product marketing landscape?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were the darling in the EV luxury sector for many years and, continue to be an amazing product. However, many other competitors have come to upseat them, notably Rivian, and many other car makers are now making other luxury EV brands. So how this is manifested for Tesla is we've noticed that they've had to have some major price slashes over the last few months. And that's a hard position to be in. In my opinion, they haven't been able to move fast enough and they haven't been able to respond to that competitive threat. They've really held their ground with what their positioning has been, but now it's really the time for them to act outside of that pricing.
And Meghan, this is something that you kind of personally see at Jasper. Jasper's going through this, you're being disrupted all the time. You're in the midst of this right now. Like, how have you seen this play out? How have you thought about managing some of the challenges that comes with this rapid disruption in the Gen AI space?
Yeah, I mean, I think you spoke to it really well earlier as far as we always knew this market was going to get crowded, right? We saw how powerful generative AI can be, and we were like, this is going to be something that is baked into everything. We had no illusions that we were going to remain the only player in the field. And so, I think for us, it really meant we had to pick our focus and the positioning of the company and the positioning of the product, who we were selling to, why we were different. And being able to pay off that positioning mattered a lot to reduce the noise of, as other adjacent companies got in, so we wouldn't be knee jerking all over the place. I think the biggest, anecdotal one I can tell you is when ChatGPT hit the world by storm. The interesting thing about that is it actually ended up being a very positive thing for us because it just completely tipped the scale when it came to awareness of what AI was for content creation. And so, and OpenAI is a partner of ours. It's one of the models that we use. And so we very much saw a rising tide lifting all boats in that sense. Our numbers increased as a result of ChatGPT coming out because people were brought into awareness of this new technology and that had never really considered it before. So it's not always that shifting fields are bad for you. It really is about the field taking shape, right? And what you need to know is your defensive position strong there still? If it is, if it's unique, don't worry about the noise. In fact, find a way to lean into it and benefit from it. If it's not, if a competitor has come about and done exactly what you do, arguably better, then I think you need to sit down with your team and figure out, all right, well, what does chapter 2 look like, right? But dissecting, the different types of competitive stories that arise and figuring out which you actually need to act on and which you just need to absorb and understand, that's key for a product marketer. And they often play that role to calm the rest of the company, and look for those signals when that comes.
And
And
I'm just curious. Sorry, go ahead, Mary.
I was gonna say, if I could add in something there too. I love that you took such a positive approach to this, Megan. And I was lucky enough to get to go to Jasper's Gen AI conference on Tuesday. They talked about Chat GPT. They talked about how grandmas now know about Gen AI, and it's this wonderful thing. And Jasper is really positioning themselves for business use cases and for marketers. And so they had some amazing product launches that they shared that went around that and really filled in those use cases and really amplified their positioning. So I love how just in real time, when we've been working together, I've been able to see how Jasper has taken the reins in terms of defending their position and leaning in and not, frantically worrying about the noise that's coming in from all of his competitors in this huge space that's booming.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's fascinating right now, right? Like every day changes what the market looks like. And I actually want to go back really quickly to what you were talking about with strategic emphasis, Brendan, before. So in my mind, like your positioning is about you, and that doesn't change that often, but the strategic emphasis is about the market and what that looks like. And, that can change. So in the early days, we were talking a lot about pain as our strategic emphasis. It was like, hey, you've got 7 blog posts to write this week. You're stuck. You've got writer's block. We can help, right? But as the consciousness of AI really erupted, when competitors got in, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, then our strategic emphasis really shifted to be more about, change, right? And we're going to help you navigate this very transformational time in marketing, right? But our positioning didn't change as far as who we sold to, why we were different and better in that way.
And I'm just curious, Megan, I love this kind of narrative of ChatGPT emerges. You can see the benefits from this and actually see the tailwinds it gives you in terms of awareness, and then really lean into some of the business use cases. Was that what it felt like internally? Like when ChatGPT came up, internally, what did that feel like? Were there different perspectives at the company? Like, how did you manage that? Because in hindsight, when you see the awareness really boost and the numbers go up, that feels great. But I imagine everyone didn't see that right away.
Yeah, I remember the day really well. So internally, there was just like a day of kind of, I'll say like stunned assessment, right? I think it's fair and honest to say that of like, and we've talked with OpenAI, and they've said this publicly since then as well, that like they themselves were a little caught off guard by how much this took off. They just thought it was, it's really just a different interface to their existing technology. It wasn't even a new model, but wow, did it grow. And so there were a few days where we were just watching it, like understanding, talking to OpenAI, talking to our customers, like trying to understand like what it was about this moment, and this particular interface and technology that just exploded. And then having gotten like a better handle on that, then we could get together and figure out like, okay, cool, does this change anything about our direction, right? And we actually decided to do that in person. Like we're a remote company, but we all flew to Austin to just have a executive team day to make sure that we were, right, and we're taking it seriously and taking through all the steps. But yeah, I think like it's it's much cleaner in concept. I think in reality, you're trying to do all this stuff live and make the best choices you can in the moment.
Makes sense. Let's shift a little to talk about how the PMM role changes during this time. I mentioned that the PMM role can become more like mission control, and you can play that role of really organizing everyone, maybe trying to get everyone to not overreact in some cases. I'd be curious how you've seen this role. And Megan, I know you've described this to me a little bit differently, that a product marketing leader often has to be like a therapist for the organization. Can you say more about what that looks like?
Yeah, well, so patient therapist confidentiality means that I can't talk about it, but no, I'm kidding. The I think it's um, there's there's an order that I think the product marketer has to restore in a moment when the tides are shifting or the landscape is moving around, and we're well equipped to do this because a lot of a lot of the stuff that you read in Mary's book is about like you already need to play this sort of gravitational center of figuring out where you stand as a company and what your products stand for. And so you're well positioned to sort of ground everybody again to say, hey, look, here's the infrastructure that our product was built upon. Does this damage that infrastructure? And in what ways, right? And just get everybody to focus on the fundamentals. So that's kind of what I mean about a therapist, in that you're bringing everybody back down to earth and helping them sort of have a like regain a safe space to assess where they stand and where they may or may not need to move from there.
Mary, I know that I think you frame this more as like PMMs, or product marketing leaders in general, can play like a crisis communication role, like a crisis manager role. Can you say a little bit more about what that looks like, or how you played that role?
Yeah, definitely. So I love that you brought up the Ben Horowitz book about the wartime CEOs, because I think when you're in a really competitive situation like this, you can think of yourself as a wartime PMM, and you can treat that as a crisis comm, or better yet, since we're product marketers, as a product launch. And either you're going to be repositioning, changing your strategic emphasis, really updating everything from your messaging to your website to the emails that are sent out. So just really getting a good understanding of what actually needs to be changed during this time period. So the way that I like to think about it as a launch is, because when you are managing a launch, you need to gather that team together. You need to understand who all the players are. You need to understand your strategy. Is it staying the same, or are you pivoting? And then you also need to build out all of the components. So what are you actually doing to change? What are the timelines? What are the goals? And ultimately, what is your point of view? So since we have that launch muscle, I love thinking about this as, an opportunity where we can really pull this together and be a really, a strong voice in this conversation. So one thing I'll share, a different competitive situation, but one where we really knew we needed to pivot, was ad roll, now known as next roll. We were in a competitive situation with a lot of point players that also did the same thing that we did, retargeting. And we were noticing, I think, with that stunned silence, that stunned understanding, as you were talking about, Megan, that some of our competitors that weren't evolving out of that one trick pony space were really being sold as fire sales, and they weren't succeeding, or even bankrupting in some cases. So we knew that the moment was now, and we really needed to pivot, and we had the technology and the people to do so. So we really rallied together for 6 months. We changed our positioning, we changed our strategy, and we evolved into more of a performance marketing suite with multiple products rather than just the product we were really well known for. Still really fit our core customer base. It still really helped them grow their business. So our core fundamentals are really there. But I feel like because we treated it as kind of this wartime situation where everyone from the CEO to every engineer working on this project were really aligned with this under PMM's vision, I think it became really successful when we repositioned the company. So it was really exciting to be in a situation like that. It can be done. It can seem daunting, but you do need to be the therapist, be the person that brings everyone together, and however you want to manage it. I think the best way is to think about it as treating it as the launch where you are, helping facilitate all of those conversations together.
I like that. And just for everyone, I see your questions coming in and we'll have time to answer them, but I'll work a couple in. And there's one here that I think is relevant to this PMM role from Liana that said, what kind of pressure do you get from your exec team during this market hype cycle? Like, how have you encountered CEOs that become obsessed with competitor messaging? But we all know that that perception doesn't always equal reality. How do you think about that? How do you think about the role of the PMM or the product marketing leader in helping manage that?
I think typically when you find that situation where your CEO or anyone in the company is really stressing you about a competitor, it's because they need something, right? They're finding themselves in a situation where they're having to defend the differentiation of the company and they don't have the words to do that. And so what I don't think you need to do is I don't think you need to build out a whole campaign or redirect your marketing, but I would find the shortest direct way to solve that need. It could be something as simple as, hey, I'm going to give you a talking point. I'm going to give you, a clear us, them, 2x2 comparison that you can have for these situations to equip you, right? And that's our job as well. Like, they should not be stressing in these situations. They should have that positioning. And then after they have that, if they're still sort of every ad that the competitor runs, they still shoot you, information, you can kind of go back to that same core document you gave them and said, hey, exactly right. They're playing in their lane. Here's our lane. Here's why we're different, and we believe in that positioning, and just hammer that home.
Yeah, I'd also add, take a deep breath, have them take a deep breath with you. Sometimes you'll notice that these competitors are really flashes in the pan. They come up, they're hot on the App Store for a week or two, and then they absolutely go away and are not a problem anymore. So I'd say in situations like that where you're actually not sure what the competitive threat is, offer to monitor it. Monitor how they're doing, with the information that you have available. Monitor within your own data, if it's sales, if it's market share, if it's deals where this competitor is potentially, coming in. Monitor and make sure that you're looking at it and, recapping that to the exec on a weekly basis so they can start to see if this really is a problem before making changes. And then if it's something that does need to be an immediate change or something that they're really pushing on, sometimes I'm a fan of trying things that are pretty low stakes, like changing, one sheet or changing, the messaging in the App Store on one of the bullets. So something that where you can kind of add in a little bit of give and take to see if there's any updates or anything that can happen in that sort of rapid message testing. But I wouldn't swing all the way to the left, as Megan was saying. Make sure that you steady the course and you're the voice of reason during this time.
Maybe I can picture you with a room full of execs doing guiding breathing exercises, getting everyone breathing together as a first step. I like that.
Everyone, yeah. Once I brought scotch to a meeting, but I never have brought meditation to a meeting, but maybe I'll start to do that.
I don't know which one's more effective, but
right.
we were talking about kind of this giving them talking points and kind of informing what's the quick way you can give them some information on how to react to all this. And I think that goes right into this idea of rapid competitive insights or this 80-20 research. And Mary, this originally came from your book as one of your strategies. So maybe I'll start with you. How can you do this well? There's a bunch of questions in here of essentially what channels can you use for this? What are some of the ways, the touch points you can get to customers on this? But in general, can you just give us an overview when you think of rapid competitive insights, trying to get research done and probably less budget and definitely less time? What does good look like for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw someone post on LinkedIn something similar to this week called the broke guide to competitive positioning. So I'll take that title for now. But I think that there's a few really easy ways that you can stand this up if you have a couple of hours and you have some time yourself, or even if you want to, pitch it over to Upwork to get someone to help you with this. But thinking about your positioning pillars, your existing positioning pillars, what makes you unique? What are the things that really differentiate you that you're really going strong on in the market? Listing those out in a matrix, then listing out your top 3 competitors, not 10 competitors, as we saw on that slide earlier, up to 3, don't do them all, but try to understand what those competitors are saying about each of your positioning pillars. Are they also saying that they're easy, fast? Is there anything that they're saying about the market that they serve? And there's some really easy ways with some light cyber stalking that you can find this out. I am a big fan of looking at press releases, especially at the boilerplates, because that gives you a really good understanding of how the company is trying to position themselves. It talks about where they're located, but then also gives you the category that they think they're playing in, and who they're really serving. Also try to watch any recent webinars or executive presentations from conferences or anything that they've had recently on YouTube. That'll give you a really good hint. And then just looking at their webpage, of course, how are they positioning this on their product? But just by looking at that and doing a quick absorption of that information and putting it in one place, you can get a pretty good understanding of how all of your competitors, not all, your 3 top competitors are really playing in that space, and really assess where you're similar or different and where you might need to pivot accordingly. I love some of the other ideas that you had on there, like exit interviews with customers, having quick focus groups, and inviting customers out for lunch or something more casual. But I feel like we often think that we have to spend 50 or 100K on these big competitive intel projects, and that's really not the case. You can do a deep dive yourself and really get that probably 80% there of what you're trying to accomplish.
That's great. And there's a question from Jono in here specific to Jasper on this. And he asked, what specific research helped Jasper determine where to focus? Was it reviews, interviews? Meghan, I guess maybe I'd broaden the question, just like, how did you all use this tactic? How did you think about rapid competitive insights or 80/20 research?
Yeah, I'll talk first about the research that we've done. So the interesting thing about Jasper and this space is when you're in like a fast moving space, your time to do anything is shortened, not only because you have to move quickly, but because the market changes and opinions change so quickly that the research you did a month ago may no longer be valid, right? We introduced Jasper Art in late August, early September, on research and on an understanding from our customers about what they needed, and then a month later Lensa came out, right? And that was again like a entirely different use case, an entirely different acceleration in the market. So research in fast moving industries kind of has to be iterative. The ways that we get at it, in past companies, I've used tools like Gong that allow you to sort of record and search sales conversations for when competitors come up to understand not even necessarily how the competitors can positioning themselves, but how the buyer sees that competitor, right? And trying to get tidbits that way. As Mary said, talking with customers, and especially the customers that have left you about why they did or why they chose where they went. You have to do the 6-month-long study. It's not going to work in this kind of an industry. So you get the input where you can. I think for us, the hardened example I'll end with is we took a look at our customer base and we realized that we actually have kind of 2 categories of user. We have what we call like the prosumer. These are individual single players who are using Jasper. They're likely using it for a professional reason, hence the prosumer, but they're like a single blogger at a company or a freelancer or a solopreneur who's putting it on their personal credit card as a secret weapon, right? That's one audience. The other audience is business buyers, right? VPs, CMOs, directors of content who buy Jasper for their full team. And so when we were kind of thinking how to position, we sort of looked at which of those audiences is growing at the fastest rate, which one has the longest retention, which one feels like it fits our use cases the best. And we kind of created a hierarchy of like, look, we're going to position for businesses because we see the strongest growth there. We're still going to sell and serve and communicate with our prosumer audience, but we sort of have picked a positioning hierarchy there around what is most closely aligned with the unique value that Jasper can provide.
I like that. So just kind of segmenting where you need to be focusing helps that a bit. And you mentioned Jasper Art, and we talked about compressed launch timelines in these markets. Jasper Art came to market very quickly, right? Can you walk through a little bit? I know you mentioned this in our conversations. Can you just give that story of how Jasper Art came to launch and what that looked like, just to illustrate the speed at which product marketers and product teams are trying to launch things?
Yeah, so we got access to the language model for Jasper Art in like the third week of August, I want to say. We had built the product a week to 10 days later. Like the product organization, which like they're unreal. I'm in awe of them every day, but they built this thing like soup to nuts in 10 days. And then, not to be one-upped, we decided on the marketing team that we would launch it the following week. And the reason why, and so it's funny, we were joking about it before, because it's like, Mary and I have just poured ourselves in the last year into developing this whole course that's like, do not rush launches, do your research, like build out your positioning. And sometimes it's just not possible. And it was not possible for us because, again, there's a first mover advantage right now in AI, and the world was developing so quickly that we decided strategically as a company, we're going to get the thing out the door, and we're going to learn from the behavior with this tool live, and then we'll evolve, right? So we launched it in a week. Just blew our launch goals out of the water. Our plan was we would launch to annual customers first, because we wanted to create an incentive for monthly customers to upgrade to annual. That was smart. That worked really well. Then we rolled out to all customers because we wanted to create an incentive for people to come a Jasper customer so that they could get the art. That worked. And then so that was like September, and then like October, because we were so busy with our customers and like the demand there, October, we rolled it out publicly. So anybody could buy it. And that did not work. And it did not work because in the time between us releasing this to customers and it just flying like gangbusters, people buying this thing, Lensa came out, a bunch of other art apps came out, really consumer focused art apps came out, like mobile phone apps, because we don't have it on the mobile phone. We're more of a platform and extension and API kind of tool. And so we had to study in October, like what happened there? Like why did this sell so well with customers and not as well with the public? And go back and kind of assess that launch. Now, had we had 6 months ahead of that, we might have been able to do some testing to figure out, what should the price point be? What do the features need to be for a, consumer sale, that kind of thing. But for us, we wanted to get it out the door, and we learned along the way. And since then, by the way, so we've learned from that. Since then, we have decided that Jasper Art is a feature, not a standalone product. And we've rolled it back into the main platform for our customers as added value there, which this is just like really good section in the course around how you decide pricing and packaging and what should be included in a package, what should be a paid add-on to your customers, and what should be like its own product line. I think that got crystallized really well in the course, and ironically, like I was living the experience of that real time.
It's one of the questions I think at Reforge we get a lot, is this pricing and packaging question, how you think about features. And so I'm really excited to see this program go live, because I think that'll bring a lot of perspectives to that area. I love what you said about, the program really pushes us to do this really thorough, deliberate positioning. And the quote that comes to mind, I think from Picasso, though it could be from anyone, was that you have to know the rules so you can break them. That's the goal here, is if you really understand all the rules and the best way to do it, it actually helps empower you to take these shortcuts a lot more meaningfully.
Totally.
And then I just want to linger on one thing you said there. You mentioned Lensa coming, and I think this is a really interesting thing of just the competitive threat coming through. Can you just talk a little bit about how you all reacted to Lensa and what you all were looking at to see, is this a big disruptive factor? Is this a real competitive threat? How did you pressure test that
Yeah,
from your perspective?
it's a great example because Lensa is not going for our audience. Lensa is going for a hobbyist who finds this thing really fun and interesting and wants to play with it and share it on social media. So we knew that very early, and we're not worried about Lensa because it was not the professional use case. It wasn't at that, at least at the first pass. Who knows where they'll go? It was just selling to a wholly different audience. And again, in that case, it's one of those cases where a rising tide lifts all boats because it helped to expand awareness that these sort of tools existed, and when we became the business use case for that. But so that was when we could kind of very quickly assess and put into its lane and say, cool, best of luck to Lensa, you know.
And Mary, I don't know if Lensa came across your all's competitive landscape from the Lightroom product, or if there's just any others that you'd share. Like, have you seen these other direct competitive threats that you've had to do that pressure testing? What did that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll share a story from the company I was at prior to Adobe called Social Chorus. They're now known as First Step. And we had a direct competitor that was frankly copycatting our roadmap. And it became this really frustrating situation where we'd come to market with something and then weeks later, they would actually launch something super similar. So we realized we weren't going to really win on this feature to feature fight. We needed to do something bigger. So with them, again, I feel like it was this rallying moment where we decided we are the Coca-Cola, they are the Pepsi. We're not going to talk about them, but we're going to create this vision. We're going to create this brand where customers will want to flock to us. So we did that by developing a customer advisory board, which we hadn't had prior to this, where we'd invite 12 customers every few months, the buyer and also the user of our product. So we could really get these deep insights about the decision-making process that they had to go through to buy, who they had to influence, and then how the people on the ground were actually using the product and what they really needed. So not just focusing on one part of the enterprise cycle, but really understanding the whole idea of it. And then really, we went to market with more of a vision than just a feature by feature playbook. We talked about how the users of our product and the buyer of our product could help their entire organizations grow by helping them be connected and communicating, not just, hey, here's these new features that are coming out to market. So really helped us orient around our messaging strategy, and ultimately it was really successful for us. But I think we had to have that push to have that competitor, come into our space and really be, angling at every feature that we were trying to get to market as well in order for us to make that move. And sometimes competitive threats in that way can be good because they can be motivating for the entire organization. So again, trying to look at it from a positive spin, like Meghan shared a couple of examples of how can you actually take this and run with it.
Yeah, I like the difference there of, Lensa for your case, Meghan, was a little more like this isn't as much of an impact. This is doing something different. Let's not get caught up in the hype. And Mary, with your example, it's a lot more like this is a real threat. It does change our strategy. We do need to adapt, but there's opportunity here, and we should lean into that opportunity and run with it. I think that's great.
Yeah, and the one other thing I'll say here is that in either case, developing the point of view as a product marketer is really critical. I think when you're in situations like this, I think it's easy to come up with 4 different recommendations, or how you might do things. No one wants to see that. The executives want to understand what is your point of view and what is the strategy you think will win. And that goes back to everything we've been talking about today. Sometimes you don't have 100% of the research available. It's 80% research, 20% intuition, but I think the strongest PMMs and leaders I've ever worked with have that point of view and are able to push it forward.
Yeah, I think Marius came from you in one of our conversations that stuck with me, and paraphrasing, but you said something like, in times of uncertainty, people are really attracted and drawn to people who can speak with confidence and certainty. And I think a PMM has a pretty unique role to play there, being able to pull the pieces together, maybe not have the perfect point of view, but have a strong point of view to help drive alignment.
Absolutely.
I'm going to shift over into the questions, and we can try to answer some of them asynchronously as well, but I'll jump through a few of these here. Phoebe Wang asked a question: during seasons when you must make a sudden pivot, responding to an unexpected situation, how do you as a PMM continue to prove your value to a company? How do you prove success of your response plan? It's kind of more of a career question, but I think it's interesting. Kind of metrics are all thrown around. How do you show that you're doing a good job when everything's kind of getting thrown around here?
I can start with that. So I think it's really important for PMMs to be like very connected at the hip to the product goals, right? So usually at the start of the year, you will figure out as a company, what are we trying to do this year? What are we releasing? Why are we releasing that thing? And what are we hoping it'll do for the company, right? And that usually gets down to a quantifiable number. And product marketing comes in at that point, can kind of test that number, make sure that the market will bear it, and then be able to put together a launch plan that will put that product on the right track to hit that number. Now, that could be a revenue number. It could be just an adoption number. But to me, it's like important that product marketing attaches themselves to, wherever possible, to some sort of a goal for the company, and then shows very concretely where they're contributing to that. In times of change, I don't think that change shifts that much, because even if you're pivoting at the company, as a company, you usually have some short-term goal that accompanies that pivot, right? So we got access to Jasper Art, we got access to the art language model very unexpectedly, but we didn't just build the product and say, hey, hopefully it does well. We said, hey, we think we can get to X million in ARR if we spin up an art product. We tested that out. We felt like made some adjustments there, and then we're able to show what we could drive for that product. So I think it's staying close to the product's number and making sure that you're both marching up towards the same thing.
I like that. Mary, any advice you'd have on, like, when you think of success for product marketers, what does that look like in times of uncertainty? Does that look any different?
Yeah, well, something I say a lot and related to what you're talking about with the metrics is 10% of your time should be spent telling other people what you're working on and what you're doing. So have those goals, make sure everyone knows what the team is doing to achieve those goals. When you're tracking towards those goals, make sure that you're sharing that out. Don't skimp on the part of being, connecting yourself to the company's goals as the product marketing team to show your value. So everything you're doing with the plan, all the consolidation and facilitation you're doing to really treat this as a launch like we've been talking about today, make sure you're also communicating that as much as possible so people are able to connect back the impact that you're making. So don't forget about that part. That's all I'd add.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. That
Internal
like
comms are
shared.
huge.
I was going to say, yeah, that shared understanding of what success is. I think, as a leader, being in a position where you see yourself as successful and the rest of the company doesn't is a really bad position to be. I think all that internal alignment is great. Part of that has to be a shared vision of what success is between the different stakeholders. There's a great question here from Maria. What advice do you have for a company that's acting as the disruptor in an established crowded market, being on the offense instead of defense? We've talked a little bit about how to react to competitive pressure. How do you position yourself to be that disruptor more effectively?
I think if you've decided that you're the David against the Goliath, you need to be really clear about it. Have an opinion, be pointed. I don't think you need to call out your competitor, because I think you can do this without being overtly negative to your competitor, but you can say, unlike established, stodgy, over bloated software, we do X, and really sort of play into the weakness of that market lead to your advantage. Where they're powerful, you're agile. Where they're, established, you're innovative. And so find out name that competitive differentiation and hit it hard. And I think that has won a lot. I mean, that has moved markets before. I think the example that I love there that I've shared before is Third Love, which is a like bra and lingerie company that went after Victoria's Secret. They went out very strongly, saying, and they actually did call out Victoria's Secret by name, but they said, look, these guys have been around forever. They have a very limited, very restrictive view of what beauty is, and frankly, of what women are. And we serve all women of all types, of all sizes. And it was showed not just in their positioning, but in their product choices. So because they were an e-commerce company only and they didn't have retail stores, they could afford via warehousing to have a broader width of sizes, right? So there was real factual substance to back up that positioning, and they went hard at it because they knew that they had defensibility there, that the market had shifted in terms of culture and people's understanding of inclusiveness and beauty, and that there was an opening. So they could have said, hey, they could have gone after a pain strategic emphasis. They could have said, hey, you know, we're the best bra for you. They could have gone after like any other of the emphasis points, but they knew that that competitor was well known, kind of well hated, and that there was room for them to be a very good opposition to them.
Yeah, I love that example. Mary, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Any ways that you would look at this differently as a disruptor?
Yeah, I love what Meghan said, and I'm so glad you brought up that example. The thing I would just add is don't lose sight of the fundamentals. You know, if you're the disruptive technology, you still need to pick a target market. You still need to have your position. Just because you're the darling for one period of time doesn't mean you're going to hang on to that forever. So don't get greedy. Your product is not for everyone. Make sure that you are being really specific about those that you're serving and how you're serving them, and go big in that direction.
Oh, one more thought on that you just struck up for me, Mary, is
Yeah.
know when you've won, right? Like you're going to be a victim of your own success in some ways with that positioning, where it's like, if 5 years go by and you've taken the market share and you're still talking about that same competitor, or you're still obsessed with them as your main differentiation, like that's not good. That's tone deaf, right? And so I think it's like you need to know when the moment is right to be the disruptor. You need to recognize, and this is painful for some people who love being the disruptor, like you need to recognize when you've become the market leader. Like HubSpot went through that a little bit, where it was like we were like this scrappy up and coming startup for a while, and a lot of people loved that message. And then we looked around, there were like 100,000 customers, and we were, you know, one of the largest CRMs on the market, and that same messaging didn't work anymore.
Someone queued this up very well for me. They said, good question for the end. I agree. What are your favorite blogs, influencers, books, resources you use for PMM strategy inspiration beyond Reforge? Of course, that's my chance to plug. We have a spring cohort coming up. Reforge has tons of great resources. I highly encourage you to enroll in this upcoming cohort. Check out the product marketing program that Mary and Meghan put together. But Mary, I'd love to hear your quick take on what are the influences you have? What inspires you in the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really fortunate to get to be the host of Women in Product Marketing, a podcast where I get to talk to these amazing women all the time about product marketing. So check that out if you haven't. There's another podcast I love called Product Marketing Experts, where dives deep into the challenges that product marketers are facing in and out. And it's just a really wonderful resource. I also love the PMA conferences. They're having a few coming up this year, live and virtually. And that has been a really great resource, as well as a place to make connections for me. So Product Marketing Alliance.
That's great. Meghan, what about you?
In addition to all those, I would just say, look at the field, look at your competitors, and I would underscore, don't get jealous, get curious, right? Like dissect, when you see a launch that somebody else has done where you're like, oh God, that was good. Dissect it, figure out why it worked, what was great about it, and internalize that into your next strategy. Same thing goes for bombs, right? Figure out why something bombed, whether it was yours or a competitor. And make it a practice within your team. You may be a solo product marketer and you can do this on your own, But if you've got a team, it can be a great discussion point we used to love, so at HubSpot, I don't think this is a bad thing to say, we used to love watching Dreamforce, right? Which is Salesforce's, is another big CRM company. You hadn't heard of it. And they had launches every year. So we would get together in the office at the time because it was pre-going remote. And we would make it a party and we'd watch the launch and we'd give them credit and props where they deserved it. And we kind of would learn from it. It's just a good way also to make yourself a constant scholar in how things are changing.
I love that. Well, I know we're right at time here. Mary, Meghan, thank you so much. We had a lot of people ask about product marketing things in general before this program, and then this specific question of what do you do in these markets? And we were able to spin up this event really quickly. Thank you for your time putting this together, and thank you for sharing your perspectives. Always enjoy talking with you both.
And if there are questions that we didn't answer, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or elsewhere, Twitter. I'm happy to answer any further questions too.
Same. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.